and we're from the partner integrations and developer relations team. So while you're still joining us, please feel at home. You can make use of the chat section below to share with us your name, share with us what you're working on, any exciting project that you would love us to explore, and even provide feedback. We would like to engage with it. Okay, a quick one. If you check at the bottom of your screen, bottom right to be specific, you would see a questions tab where you can raise or share questions that you would want us to answer. Or if you have any inquiries or suggestions, the questions tab is the best avenue for us to engage with you directly. Yes, so I think we'll just give a little bit more time for more people to join before we proceed with the goal for today. I can see we have, I think, a few more people joining. So please share with us your name, share with us where you're working from. You can also share with us where you're joining us from as well. If it is in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, please don't hesitate. Please don't be shy. Just we would love to really connect with like-minded persons, just as you. I think we're 3 minutes in. I think we'll just kickstart in a couple few minutes. I think when we have, I think more people with us in our developer workshop. Okay, we 5 minutes past time, and I would like to do a reintroduction once again. So my name is King, and with me here is my partner KU from Partner Integrations and Developer Relations team, and we'll be hosting this developer workshop that will be focused on building a credit decisioning system with Mono's APIs. So yeah, the idea for the rundown of the workshop program is that first of all, we'll be giving you a brief introduction on what Mono is all about, and we would proceed to speak on introducing credit-focused Mono APIs as well. Next, we will touch base on relevance of accurate credit decisioning in a lending market, and we would look at a typical view on the stages involved in the learning process for a learning company. Also, we would look at how underwriting typically works in this current environment, that is, learning environment, and we would also get acquainted with the Mono APIs that feeds into the underwriting process. Next, we would touch on enhancing credit decisioning processes, and we would look at recommendations for customers at the end of a rejected loan application. And right after this, we would have a use case exploration and a demo presentation on a proof of concept app that we built internally to showcase how Mono's credit APIs come to play. And we will do a workshop recap and have our question and answers. So yeah, I would love us to know that Mono is on a mission to build reliable open banking services for businesses in Africa so that they have access to real quality financial data and to initiate direct bank payments. We are currently live across different countries. This includes Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. And I would love us to know that Mono has done the heavy lifting in building reliable infrastructure that allows businesses and also developers to build really truly innovative products for their users and customers. And we were founded roughly 4 years ago. That was in 2020. And from that time up till now, we have linked over 4 million um, bank accounts. So what this means here is users have trusted Mono to securely share their financial data with their favorite companies and businesses. And over the course of the last few years, we have been backed with top investors in the all over the globe, which includes likes of Y Combinator, Entry Capital, and also Tiger Global. Also, from inception, we have retrieved roughly 700 million financial data transaction records, which is a very phenomenal, moment for us. Right now, I'm going to touch base on our two flagship products, which is Connect, Direct Pay, and Lookup. So Connect is a data product that allows your customers to share with you their financial data from their favorite banks, neobanks, and fintechs. And they also get to share with you their telco information from their telco providers. And so with the financial data product, you have access to the user's transactions, statements, income, identity, insights, and a lot more information that would allow you to build truly robust tools. The second flagship product that we have is Mono Direct Pay that allows you to collect two major direct bank payment types. The first is one-time payment. So with one-time payment, you can build checkout systems, you can build funding systems on your platform, that allows your users to directly uh, send money, of course, to you with the authorization. And you should also understand that no cards are involved in this direct bank payment. There is no risk involved, and most importantly, there is zero chargeback to a business. And our last flagship product, but not the least, is Mono Lookup, which allows you to securely verify the identity of users and businesses that you will be servicing. So with our robust set of lookup APIs, you would have the ability to perform KYC, KYB on each of these entities so that you would know who is coming on board on your platform. And yeah, over the last 4 years roughly, we have achieved some certain milestones. And we have had businesses who report that they have experienced 90% decrease in fraud attempts, and they've also experienced 60% increase in onboarding completion. And last but not least, they have experienced 40% decrease in non-performing loans, which is a very remarkable figure. So right now, focusing on the core of today's workshop, it's very important to understand the relevance of credit decisioning in this current fintech landscape. And it is very imperative to note that credit decisioning is very important to have for a lending company, as it is responsible for various lending practices while ensuring loans are extended to capable borrowers. And in this same fashion, it helps lending companies, lenders, and even MFBs to assess and mitigate risk, which at the end of the day will lead to a reduction in financial losses and loan default from customers. And with an active credit decisioning in place, it's I mean, mono comes into the equation where your users have a very remarkable experience with the decisioning that will be put in place. And this way, it also promotes access to the credit for undeserved populations as well, while preventing over indebtedness. So yeah, looking at stages in the lending process, we have been able to identify five major stages. The first is the application stage. The second is the credit check stage. The third is underwriting stage. The fourth is the approval or rejection stage. And the last but not the least is the disbursement stage. So I'm going to use the next few minutes to touch base on each of the stages I've identified here. So the first stage in a lending process is where the borrower wants to apply for a loan. So they'll provide a couple personal and financial information. This includes the financial account they intend to receive the loan and a few personal information that lending companies would love to have. And at the same time, KYC is also being done at this stage so that lending companies will have an idea on who is coming to make a loan application. So moving past this stage, we have the credit check stage where the lender here, the lending company, assesses the credit worthiness um, of this particular borrower. And this involves checking their credit history, their income, transaction records, and other relevant factors that would make this credit check stage to be a success. Next, we have the underwriting stage where the lender evaluates the risk associated with lending to the borrower. So a couple of risk analysis is being performed on the lender's end, and with this during this stage, the lender would be able to formulate the best lending offer. I mean, the best loan offer that is best served to this user. And at this point in time, based on the underwriting assessment from the previous underwriting stage, as I mentioned earlier, the lender here decides whether to approve or reject the loan application. And moving forward, in a case where the approval stage was a success, the lender goes ahead to disburse this loan to the user's financial account of choice. Moving forward, it will be very important to understand how underwriting works. So, on a high level, underwriting involves the process of analyzing the borrower's creditworthiness and risk profile. And once you have been able to identify the creditworthiness analysis from a particular customer, there's some factors that are being considered uh, doing this analysis. So this includes having insight on the credit score, income, debt to income ratio, employment history, and other factors that we believe would help serve the lenders best in making the right and the right team decision. So this way, lender here can determine the terms of the loan, such as the interest rate, the loan amount, and also the repayment period. So moving forward, one thing that's very important to note is how Mono APIs feed into the underwriting process. I've identified a few APIs on my screen here that speaks to how we power a really robust underwriting process. So the first is the BVN agree API. So once the user has provided their BVN ID to you, it allows you to access the user's identity information for KYC purposes. And a couple of information have been returned on this API, which includes the first name, the last name, the address, and it also returns a very important field, which is a watch listed Boolean field. So what this field entails here is if CBN or the Nigerian Police Force has requested for a user's account to be blacklisted, you'll be able to identify such customers. Probably they are into fraud or into illegal financial crime. So when you see that such users have been blacklisted on the BVN API, it's be good practice to just reject the loan because it means that such people are fraudulent. Next, we have the account lookup API that helps solve the underwriting process. And this API allows you to validate the account numbers provided by the user. So a good case example here is when you get the full name of a user from the BVN Agree API, which is consent based, you can match that to the name returned on the account lookup API. So this way you are well rest assured that this person owns the account number has been provided. And the next API that speaks to the underwriting process from Mono is the credit history lookup API. So this endpoint is a robust API that provides robust information on the credit worthiness and eligibility for a loan from the two largest credit bureaus in Nigeria, that is the Credit Bureau Limited and First Central Credit Bureau Limited. The credit history lookup API has been built in such a way that you can get credit history from either of the two and also from both bureaus at the same time. So if you want us to return credit history from the two bureaus at the same time, the API provides to you the functionality to get these records in full. And next, we have the account insight lookup API, which provides statistical analysis. So this allows you to detect repeated transactions, duplicate transactions, provides some statistical information on standard deviation, debt to income ratio is provided on the API. And with this information provided, we believe it would help you build a robust underwriting process. So speaking more on the credit history API, we have built this API in such a way that your credit decisioning process will be well enhanced and efficient. And with most APIs, you are rest assured that you have access to a reliable credit history source, as I explained earlier, from the two largest credit bureaus in Nigeria, which is the Credit Bureau Limited and also First Central Credit Bureau. And with these APIs, you can make informed decision making. So with the insight that we provide on the Insights API, on the Credit History API, you are able to make more informed lending decisions. I mean, the data is there that allows it to, I mean, that backs up whatever decision that you would want to make. And the next thing is efficient risk assessment. So with the data returned on API, it allows you to have a streamlined risk evaluation process for your lending business or application. And another way that most APIs have enhanced the credit decisioning process is with enhanced accuracy and speed. So what this means here is your users will be able to go through an underwriting process in a very short period of time. Moving forward, I've identified a few scenarios that are relevant to the underwriting process based on the API output of the credit history endpoint. So the first scenario here is when an open loan account has a good repayment history that is returned on API. It's what you should know here is that if the credit history shows an open loan account with a performing status, no default, regular repayment, and that it means that this borrower demonstrates a high financial responsibility. And an action to take here would be you can consider using Mono's Connect Inflow and Transaction API, which is another product that we serve to view transaction history so that you can make more informed decision based on the outputs. So with this API, you are able to track responsible spending habits and you have an idea on the overall financial stability. The next scenario is when you observe a closed loan account with timely payment. So what this means is when the credit history API provides to you results where previous loans are already closed and they're not default, it means that the borrower's ability to manage debt responsibly. I mean, it means that the borrower's ability to manage debt responsibly is can be seen in a good fashion, and this way you can proceed to make use of Mono's Insight API to make more informed decision at the same time and to corroborate the borrower's creditworthiness with their credit score. The third scenario is regarding pending repayment schedule. So when you run a credit check via our credit history API and you observe that there is a pending repayment schedule for existing loans, it means that this might impact financial strain or upcoming obligations of the loan that you would want to give to them. So here it's best to exercise caution and consider using our Mono Connect Income API, which would help assess the borrower's current income status. And this way you'll be able to assess if they can manage additional debt obligations. The last but not the least scenario we've identified is the no credit history found. So when no credit history is found on the result, what this means here is that this person lacks previous credit history. I mean, it means there are no records of past credit accounts or transactions. So the best action to take here is consider prompting the user to link their account with MonoConnect so they have access to the transaction API. So in the transaction API, you can view transaction data for evidence of how they save, their spending habits, and other intricate factors that can help you make an informed lending decision. Also, you can use our identity API or the BVN API to authenticate the identity on a more larger scale and to also assess their trustworthiness. So at the end of the day, when you have been able to make a decision on the loan process, I mean, in the underwriting stage for a user, and you have identified that this user might not be given a loan offer, but identified recommendations that you can share with the user. So it's well advised that you shouldn't leave the user in the dark by just saying, no, we rejected the offer. It makes sense to explain the reasons for the decision. Probably they have a low credit score or their income verification data wasn't sufficient to make a decision. and it also makes sense to offer guidance to them. So guidance in the sense that it suggests that they take a few steps that can improve their credit worthiness, such as building a savings history and paying off debts earlier. I mean, paying off debts on time. So this way, your credit models can get to match loans to them even in the smallest amount. And the last recommendation that I've identified here is as a learning business, because uh, the idea here is to have low risk as much as possible. So you can offer them financial education resources on how they can build their credit so that it can improve their financial situation in the future. So moving forward, looking at the data points that are achievable on the Mono Credit History API, we have identified a few of the relevant data points. So the first is a date opened field. So with this field, when we return to you previous loan records, you'll be able to identify when a particular loan was initiated. And it also makes sense to know when this particular loan was terminated or closed at the same time, which we return in the closed date field. And we provide to you performance status, which indicate the current status or position of the loan, which indicates if it is in good standing or if it is delinquent. And we provide to you the tenure that indicates the duration or length of the loan of the financial agreement. Next, we provide you the loan status, which indicates if this loan is active, if this loan was paid off, or if this loan was defaulted. This is a very important factor to build in your underwriting process. And we provide you the repayment frequency, which informs if this user is making payments on a monthly basis, a bi-weekly basis, quarterly basis, or even on a yearly basis. And it's very important to know the amounts of that particular loan that needs to be repaid. And this is returned in the repayment amount field, where the specific amount is to be paid towards the loan is returned during the repayment period. And another relevant data point that we've identified is the repayment schedule. So the repayment schedule here provides details on a predetermined plan outlining when all each payments are due, as well as the corresponding amount throughout the duration of the loan or account. So at this point, I'll be handing over the baton to my colleague KU to walk us through a robust use case and provide to us demo on an MVP or POC app that we have built internally. Hi, KU.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to our developer session. My name is Kayu, and I will be walking you through our demo app called we called it FinTrack 360. So FinTrack 360 is not a mono consumer product. I must mention it is just a demo app we have created to showcase how to use the Mono Lookup APIs for building better credit decision making products. Um, it simply goes through a very few steps, which I'll walk you through. I will be sharing the slides now. So, like I said earlier, the FinTrack product is just a simple MVP product we have built. It does three basic things where you verify your identity, then you retrieve your bank account information through the BVN that you have connected, and then you are able to use that same BVN to retrieve your the user's credit history. So how does it work? So first, the user submits their BVN for like service onboarding and the desired loan amount, and then calls are made to the Mono BVI APIs to verify their identity, and then to also retrieve all the user's bank accounts from NIBS. with the consent of the user. So consent basically involves inputting an OTP. So that is like a consent layer to make sure that we're in line with data protection requirements. And then, of course, lastly, you'll be able to pull up the user's credit history data using the credit history lookup API. You're able to access historical information and recent credit information too. And with that, you can profile the data to make sure that the user is eligible or illegible for a loan. So right now we're just going to be looking at how you can, or rather a short guide to a technical integration for lookup APIs with Mono. So the first thing you want to do is to set up your account on Mono, or at app.mono.co, and then next you complete the compliance process, and then you invite your team members and any other thing you need to just set up your Mono account. And then once your account has been approved, you can move on to create an app, and that those app keys, your secret keys, or add a web QRL. Those app keys is what you use to make calls to the Mono APIs. And then next, you begin your integration process. This can be done in sandbox mode before you go live. And we have sandbox keys and sandbox credentials available for you to test before you are able to go live. And you can use our documentations and our resources to do this. A link to this will be dropped in the chat box later on for you to take a look at. And then lastly, you want to test the user journey from end to end to make sure that you've accounted for every contingency, every error, and to make sure that you're giving your users the best experience. So, what are some best integration practices for when integrating Mono Lookup APIs? You have to have proper API key management processes. You have to make sure that your keys are secure and you avoid hard coding your keys to the front end so that they are not retrieved through malicious ways. So you use secure management practices like saving your keys to an environment file, and in production, of course, saving your keys to the backend environment. Then next, you want to do data validation. So in order to avoid unnecessary API calls, you can validate user inputs and parameters before making API calls or requests to the Mono Lookup API. So you can do this just with simple front-end validation, making sure, for example, the BVN is 11 digits and it is numbers and things like that. So you ensure that the data format and structure is in line with like our API specification. Next, you want to log and monitor every call that is being made, have a comprehensive logging and monitoring system. So you log the API request, the responses, the errors, you have proper error management set in place, and then you monitor performance and receive alerts for any anomalies. So you are aware before things go haywire. And lastly, I must mention that what another thing you want to do is to rate limit. So you make sure that your users are not making unnecessary calls or just like trying to test. For example, if they get frustrated if the OTP was not coming on time and then they just keep clicking it. So you want to implement rate limiting systems like that so that you avoid unnecessary calls to the Mono APIs. So how would you set up the FinTrack app? A link will be dropped in the chat box to the GitHub for this demo app. So you clone that repository and then you run npm install to install the required packages defined in the package.json file. And then, of course, you update your environment variable using the example.env file you see in the repository. And last but not least, you run npm start or npm run dev or npm run start, whichever you specify in your package.json file. So, as I mentioned again, what do you expect during this during this demo? The user's BVN is collected for verification purposes, and the desired loan amount is also collected. Then the identity information of the user pulled from the Mono Agree API BVN endpoint is displayed for user confirmation. The next, user's consent is requested to retrieve all bank account information to link their BVN from NIPS, and this will show like all the bank accounts that is linked to that BVN. And then last but not least, you'll be able to pull up the credit history and look up credit history of the user to determine creditworthiness and ascertain ability to receive the loan. So right now, I'll be showing you the UI implementation or the UI we have built or created for demoing this credit decisioning system. So this is FinTrack 360. Right now, it is working from my local system. So the first step, like I said earlier, is imputing the BVN, and this is like a consent layer just to make sure that we are able to pull we are authenticating the BVN, and the BVN belongs to the user that we want to get their data. So for this demo, I will basically be using my details and my live details so you can see how this works in a live environment. Next, I'll be imputing the loan amount. So with this, we have fired a request to the backend to begin the authentication process. I will still show you how this works and the layers at which this works. But then we'll move into a second stage where you'll be required to choose how you want to verify this data. So next, we'll be required to choose like where you want the OTP to be sent. So you can have, for people who have multiple numbers linked to their BVNs, you can have phone number 1, phone number 2, or an alternate phone number that is not linked, but has been used by your BVN in some way or the other. So now the BVN is being sent to my phone number, as you can see here. From the message that is being sent on the screen, the OTP has been successfully sent to my phone number. So now I've imputed the OTP. And now the user details has been authenticated. So this first stage first pulls up the user's data using the identity information. So I must mention that this is powered by the BVN I agree endpoint. Now the BVN I agree endpoint does two things. You can either retrieve the identity information of the user, or you can retrieve the bank account information of the user. And each stage requires a form of authentication, because this is required by NIBS for data protection of the user. So the user has to authenticate on both cases. So in this first stage, we are pulling up the identity information. Now this is my basic identity information that is being displayed: my name, my surname, my phone number, and my gender. There are other information you can retrieve from this, like state of origin, the user's address, and much more details that gives you much more about the identity of the user. So next, we'll be initiating a bank account first to pull up all the bank accounts linked to the user. This also has a consent layer, like I mentioned earlier, because this is a requirement from the provider. So we would have to input the OTP again by choosing a verification method. So I have received the OTP, and now we are fetching the bank account details. So now you can see all the bank accounts. As you can see, I have quite some. All the bank accounts linked to my BVN, and now we'll be verifying the information of one bank account. The numbers were marked for security purposes. So this this choosing of bank accounts, the bank that you want to link to, is powered also by the Mono endpoint for getting the list of banks. So now I'll be validating my UBA account. So as you can see, the bank information has been verified. You can see it returned my full name and it returned my the first two and the last 2 digits of my BVN. So now we've been able to verify the bank account, and next we'll be trying to pull up my credit information. So here we have to choose a provider. As my colleague mentioned earlier, we have 2 providers for this. We have the Credit Bureau Limited, which is represented by CRC, and then we have the First Central Credit Bureau, which is represented by XDS. So you can either choose you can choose either of those, or you can choose to get the credit data from both. So for the purpose of this demo, I'll be using both. Now, these are like parameters that usually pass to the backend, and I'll show you more about this later. And each of them represents the credit bureaus, and then both represents getting data from both. Now, this will take a bit of time to pull up because you are trying to pull that information, which is quite some information and data about the user's credit history from the APIs. So right now you can see my credit data on the screen. You can see that I have gotten credit from 3 financial institutions: GTB, Carbon Finance, and Sunfire Technology. Now you can see the different parameters and fields that are being returned, the status of these loans, the date they were opened, the closed dates, and the repayment amount. As you can see here, and we also have like a button telling you that I am ineligible for a loan. And this is because we did a simple computation where we looked at an algorithm where we looked at the number of opened loans versus the number of closed loans. So if in my case, I have more opened loans than closed loans, which means that I might be like a credit risk, and so I am ineligible for a loan. Like my colleague mentioned earlier, there are different ways you can choose to address this. You can choose to get more information from the user by having them maybe send their bank data to you using the Mono Connect APIs. You can also do this by looking at account insights, using our account insight endpoint, where you can get more information like what they're spending their money on and things like that. So here you can see that this loan, most of the loans I have here have already been closed, but for some reason the loan status hasn't been updated, which is from the provider. But you can also see the loan amount. So this is able to give you more information about the users. And you're able to know that, okay, this user might be a flight risk when it comes to loan, or this user might be a great customer for paying back their loans. So right now, I will be showing you the Mono dashboard, and we'll be retrieving API keys. I'll show you how to get API keys so that you can make calls to the backend. So first you go to app.mono.co, as you can see on my screen. And when you go to app.mono.co, you'll be required to sign up, and you see a UI similar to what is on my screen. But in my case, since I already have an account, I will just be signing in instead of signing up. So when you log into the Mono dashboard, you see a dashboard very similar to mine. But in your case, since you have not gone through the compliance process, you see a very different screen where you're required to complete your compliance, the compliance process, and provide certain information. But once that is done, you see a screen very similar to mine. And then I'll be showing you how to create an app with Mono. So first, you want to go to the app tab here, and then you click on create an app. Next, you input an app name. So for this, I'll just be calling it Lookup Demo, and then you choose like a display name. You can also choose to input your logo and then choose a product. So it's because we are demoing Lookup APIs here, we're going to choose a Lookup as our product scope. And then next, we're going to choose for our industry, we're going to choose financial services for the purpose of this demo. And that's it. You've been able to create an app. Now you can see that this app is This app is set by default to test mode or sandbox mode, so you can retrieve the keys to make calls to the APIs. You can, or and when you want to go live, you can simply toggle the button here, and your app will be live. And then you can switch out the keys from the test keys to the public keys. But we always advise that you create a separate app for this, so that you don't have any confusions in your system. Where you create two apps, one for testing in sandbox and one app for that's permanently on live. Then next, I'll be showing you API logs. So you want to navigate to the More button here, and then you go to the Audit Logs. So on the Audit Logs here, you can see the events, like who has logged in, especially if you're sharing it with a very large team. You can see who has logged in and who has done what. And then next, when you go to the API logs, you'll be able to see, when you go to the API logs, you'll be able to see information like the status of the calls you've made, the dates they were made, the time, the endpoint that was being used, the scope, and also the total cost. So you can also export this data and use it for maybe calculations, or just making sure that you're not spending unnecessarily on unnecessary calls. So this is how you'll be able to use the Mono dashboard as a team, just to streamline your processes. Next, I'll be showing you our backend implementation of the Lookup APIs, just to show you how we're able to build the FinTrack 360. So this is the repository on my local system for the FinTrack 360. And like I said earlier, you can easily clone these. With the link will be dropped in the chat box, and you can just navigate your way there if you're interested in seeing how this works and testing it on your end. So we have our controllers, our models, and our routes, but mostly we're focusing on the controllers here just to show you how this works. Now I'll start with the BVN controller. So the BVN controller here basically shows you how we're able to implement the backend procedures for this. So we started with the first process, which is initiating the BVN identity lookup. Like I said earlier, this is the agree lookup works two ways, where you're able to retrieve identity information or bank account information depending on what scope is specified or passed. As you can see here, we have the BVN and the scope and the amount being passed in the body of the request. So, and then this call is made. This is the first stage, and then this call is made to the Mono endpoint here, as you can see on my screen. And of course, you can see the Mono secret key that is being passed. Now, the secret key, like I said earlier, you have to make sure that it's secure. So this is being passed in an environment variable that is not being tracked by my GitHub repo. As you can see, these are the keys. We have an env.example file for this, so you know what to put where when you are working on it on your end. So you can see the environment variables and the keys are being passed to the controller here, and that is what is being used. So we set it up here at the top of our app, and then we went on to impute it here in the headers of the API. So next we'll move on to verifying the BVN, which is the screen you saw where you had to choose a method. Now, must note that when the first call is made, in the response, there's usually a session ID that is being returned. Now, that session ID, we retrieved it from our front end here, and then we passed it along with the method that we choose. Like I said, there are options where you can choose phone numbers, emails, and an alternate phone number that will be imputed. So the method is being passed along with the session ID, and then of course the secret key again, and it's being made to the second stage of the endpoint, which is the verify stage. And then in the response of this, that is where you see the message where the OTP has been sent. So the OTP has been sent to the phone number 1 that you saw on my screen. That's my primary phone number, and then it can be phone number 2 or email that is linked to the BVN. So that OTP is retrieved from the front end again and passed into the body of this request, along with the secret key and the session ID that we retrieved earlier. So the session ID is very important because that's how the API is able to recognize where the session is coming from. And so once this is successful, as you can see, the BVN details is fetched and sent to the front end, where you can see on my screen where you were able to retrieve the identity information. And that's how we're able to get the identity information of the user. And then the next stage was where we retrieved bank accounts. Now, the bank account stage is also very similar to the identity stage. The only difference is the scope. So as you can see on my screen, we have the same process being initiated, but because of the way we didn't have any authentication process in this, so we're using like a sort of user ID and a session being created on the front end just to retrieve the user ID and retrieve the BVN. So your user doesn't have to pass or type in their BVN all over again. It's just a user experience measure. So this is just retrieving the user ID and passing it into the API request automatically, and then the call is just being made and initiating the first process along with the secret key, of course. As you can see here, we already specified the scope in the backend as bank accounts. And then, of course, the same process occurs where you have to verify via OTP. As you can see here, like I mentioned earlier, a session ID is being passed, retrieved along with the secret key, and then the method is chosen, and then you're able to move to the next stage, which is to retrieve bank account information. So once the OTP is passed along with the session ID, along with the secret key, as always, a request is made to the API, and then the bank accounts data is sent to the front end, and that's what you were able to see, where you saw all my bank accounts that have been linked to the BVN, and then you're able to retrieve all the bank accounts information of the user. So a good use case for this would be being able to retrieve all the bank accounts of the user, and then you can tell the user, like, okay, since you have all these bank accounts, which is your primary account, as we saw in the account endpoint where we'll be going to next. So now for the account endpoint, there were two things that happened. First, we had to retrieve all bank accounts. So you could easily search through all the bank accounts that are available and then choose a bank account for the user chooses a bank account. So this is done by making a GET request to the bank lookup endpoint along with the secret key as always. And then you're able to retrieve that. We mapped through that, and they were able to showcase this on the front end where you're able to see all the bank names. And then but for calls to retrieve or to verify a bank account, what is usually passed is the NIP code and the account number. Now, this NIP code is usually returned in a response to the bank account lookup API. So in the bank account lookup API, you see the bank code, the NIP code, and some other information about the bank that is necessary. But what we need to make a call to the account number lookup API is the NIP code and the account number. So we retrieved that NIP code of the selected bank along with the account number from the front end, as you saw during the demo of the UI, along with the secret key, and then you're able to verify that this bank account is valid. So as I was saying earlier, a good use case for this would be to be able to link multiple accounts of the user to the account so that you can be able to repay back a loan. I will tell you how you might be able to do this with our other APIs. So the last and not the least stage is the credit history stage. Now, knowing very well that we used like a session earlier, like I said, we use like a sort of temporary session to save the user ID so we can retrieve the user's BVN. Now, the user's BVN is automatically passed on the back end, so you don't have to impute it again on the front end. So the user's BVN is passed, and then we showed you how you can choose a provider. So as you can see in our URL here, the provider is being passed as a path parameter. So whatever provider you choose on the front end is being passed as a parameter on the back end. Now we have three options. We have the XDS, like I showed you earlier, the CRC, and the all. So all is what is represented by both on the front end. As you can see, we just thought both would be better language instead of just saying all. So both is like a stand-in for the all parameter that is being passed to the backend. So this is being passed to the backend as a path parameter along with the BVN and along with the secret key, and then you're able to retrieve the credit history of the user, and they are able to use that computation to make financial decisions about the user, if they are eligible for a loan or if they will not be, or they require to get more information about their finances and how they manage their finances, and if they if they will be suitable for the amount of loan that they are trying to get. So next, I will be showing you how we're able to arrive at the decision to whether I would be eligible, because we are using my BVN and my credit information for this demo. I'll show you how we're able to arrive at this decision. Now, I must mention that this is not we didn't do a very robust algorithm for this. We just used a very simple front end authentication for this, just to show you a glimpse of how this can be used. But if you were going to build with this, you would have to create a more robust profile and looking at various data points in the credit history response, data response, for you to make like a final decision about the user's finances and eligibility for a loan. So as I mentioned earlier, we just did a very simple front end. We did a very simple front end computation where we just looked at the institution that was being returned and mapped over the loan status of that institution, whether they were opened and they were closed. And then we said, okay, if the number of closed was more than open, then the user was eligible for a loan. And if they were not, then you couldn't give them a loan. So like I mentioned earlier, this was just a very simple computation that we did to just be able to show you how you might be able to use Mono Credit Lookup APIs in a very robust way to make a credit decision regarding your users. So this is just to recap what we've learned today. We've learned how to use Mono Credit History APIs. We've learned what they are and what they are and the data that they returned and how that can be used. We've learned how you can use this along with other identity APIs to verify the identity of the users first, retrieve all their bank account information, and then verify that the account that they are linking is valid and theirs. And then we've shown you use cases and relevant utilization for the Mono Credit History Lookup APIs. And lastly, we've seen a demonstration of how this Mono Credit History API works for a simple MVP app we called FinTrack 360, just to show you how you can have a 360 view of a user's account and financial health. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, KU. I mean, that was very insightful. Looking at how FinTrack covered a lot of our implemented APIs. So right now we're going to be moving over to the questions and answers. If you have any question, please make use of the question tab below so that everyone can be carried along in the answering phase of the question. So I know we have a question on our screen. So I think, hi, can you take this question?
Okay, so the first question we have is on the second stage of the BVN API, is there a way to display some digits of the phone number so the users can recognize which number is phone number one or phone number two? Oh, yes, there was. So if you remember correctly, when we got to the stage where you had to input the OTP, there was a message written in red saying the OTP has been sent to this number. Now that message is being pulled from the response that we got from the first stage, from the second stage, when you verify the API. When you send a request to the verify API endpoint, it returns a response. If it is successful, it returns a response of data set of successful. And in that is a message that says where the OTP has been sent to. So
Sounds
yeah,
great.
question. If you need more clarification, you can say so using the questions tab. I'll be able to clarify for you.
All right. Thank you very much, KU. I think that was very insightful. Please don't be shy if you have any further questions. No question is too small, no question is too big. We're here to provide as much clarity that you will need regarding any inquiry or question that you have. I mean, and also, my colleague will drop in the chat section a link to our Slack community where you get to raise any further questions that you may have for us. And if you would need to onboard, you have questions regarding integration, we have channels created on the Slack community where our team of support engineers will provide to you the relevant support that you will need. And also in our community, we get to share with you recent updates on all what is like happening within Mono based on APIs, features, and even articles, resources that we feel would be useful to you as a community member. Okay, do we still have any more questions?
Okay, so we have a question that says, can you retrieve data for all accounts at once? No, right now you can't retrieve data for all the accounts at once. This has to be done individually because the user has to consent at every stage, at every point when you're trying to retrieve their user information or their financial information. So you can't retrieve all the data for all the accounts at once.
All right, sounds great. I think that was very clear, straight to the point. Do we still have questions? Like I mentioned, there's no question that is too small, too big. We'll be glad to provide as much clarity as we can offer. I think we can give an extra minute for maybe further questions to be asked. Yes, so I think as I mentioned earlier,
Yes, I think as I mentioned,
if you have any project that you're working on, please
please
share with us a link. We'd love to give it a tour and we'll provide feedback
provide.
in our experience. All right, I think we're past time, and I would like to thank everyone for joining this developer workshop. I really do hope that you found it very insightful, and special shout out to KU for taking the demo session in a very elaborate manner. And so, yeah, I think if you have any further questions or support you would need, please don't hesitate to
Would
reach
need.
out on our community channel, or you can send a mail straight to us at integrations@mono.co. We would love to provide support at any point in time. Thanks again, everyone, for your time. Please have a great week ahead. Cheers.